My name is Jessica, and I'm doing my presentation on Pearl Harbor. So, Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. It was a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from Japanese military. The next day, the day after the attack, the President FDR asked Congress for and received a declaration of war against Japan. The attack is said to be inspired by a book, The Great Pacific War by Hector Bywater, which had a realistic account of a war between the U.S. and Japan where the Japanese destroyed the U.S. fleet. On December 6th, the U.S. intercepted a Japanese message inquiring about ship movement and positions in the harbor. It was dismissed, and the morning of the attack, there was radar activity of a large group of planes. The attack started at 7:55 a.m. It lasted an hour and 15 minutes, and it is what led the United States to enter World War II. These are just some statistics on what was involved. There was a lot of planes, a lot of submarines. Um, Essentially, what happened was a bunch of people died from both the US and Japan. And after the admiral in Japan learned that his forces didn't destroy the US aircraft carriers or that the US fleet, he knew that we were going to retaliate, which we did 6 months later. And we went on to defeat Japanese Empire in August of 1945. So this is Lee B. Kennett. He wrote For the Duration, the United States Goes to War, Pearl Harbor, 1942. His international career as a historian and an author. He specialized in military history, and he received a ton of awards in his lifetime. And so basically his book focuses on the first 6 months after the attack of Pearl Harbor. He goes into detail about how America was struggling through this time and how America coped. He touches on the president's reaction to the events and essentially keeps going on with the life of America. The Great Depression took a really big toll on the company, so while everybody was surprised, it still was, they were dealing with everything from before. The Office of Civil Defense was created, and so he essentially focused all of his attention on the rise of the military and how we built it back up to attend World War II and succeed. This is Robert Sinnott. He's the author of Day of Deceit, The Truth About FDR and Pearl Harbor. He was an American sailor, photographer, and author. He got some battle stars and a presidential unit citation. He was a photographer in the Navy in World War II. And then when he retired, when he got out of the Navy, he became a journalist and photographer for the Oakland Tribune. When he retired from that, he spent 17 years researching about Pearl Harbor and then wrote this book. His version of the book is he targets the months that led up to the attack. He puts out an evaluation citing government sources, shows that the president knew and provoked the attack. He goes on to describe the encrypted messages and documents stating that the intercepted messages were decoded before and that the president knew the attack was going to happen. So the difference in the reading is Kennett, he briefly mentions the Japanese messages that were decoded. He focuses mostly on America and the military rather than the president's knowledge. He specialized in military history. He has researched and written multiple other books about U.S. history or military history, where Sinnott focuses on the time prior to the attacks. He has this idea that the U.S. Navy was able to decode the messages prior when they were intercepted, and then his huge focus is that there were so many warning signs that Pearl Harbor was going to happen. So Kennett wrote when there was a lot less research of the events. His input was based on interviews with survivors, families, people that were there for that time period, people that had written biographies and things like that. And so he focuses more of his information on World War II and how Pearl Harbor triggered the war rather than time during the war. Where Sinnott, he published his over 10 years later when there were already a ton of other documents and books and movies. And so he had the ability to dissect them all and take what he wanted out of them. So he focuses most of his research on that, and also the fact that he was able to get documents from federal agencies because they were open to the public. And at the point of time when he wrote his book, there were already conspiracy theories that FDR was involved. He also fought in World War II. So these are pictures of the 6 main ships, and it just goes to explain which ones were bombed, how they were bombed, how they sunk, and if they were able to be repaired and used in war. And then here is some pictures. One of the boats that's under the USS Arizona. The beginning of the attack is a photo, and it was a Japanese torpedo made a direct hit on battleship USS Oklahoma. And so this was the opening sequence to the attacks. And then these are some after ones. There is a huge memorial. There's a museum, and they've got some stuff that's was picked up and received. There is actually a photo of one of the torpedoes from Pearl Harbor. And then these are all of the references that I used. Thanks so much.